Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the G-Forces podcast. So, today we are getting ready for the Australian Grand Prix, which is in a week from today when we are filming.
We are back.
Yes, very excited. There's been, I feel like, a lot going on in the F1 world, probably just because of Drive to Survive.
Yeah, I'm like, is there really? Not a crazy.
I think it's probably just because of Drive to Survive. It feels like there's a lot going on, but not actually.
Yeah, no, like Emma said, Drive to Survive just released. We're filming this on Sunday, so it was released 2 days ago. I think we have like
We've got a couple of episodes left.
It's there for entertainment. Is it factually correct?
Definitely no.
Definitely not. So take it with a grain of salt.
Which I will say, Netflix loved the show. That's what got us into F1 and motorsport in the first place.
Yes,
but
thank you.
Just a quick little note. Fangirls are very detail-oriented.
They will
find the things that are not factually correct and point them out. So, like, one person just made a video of them watching the Miami episode with Lando's win, and y'all making it seem like Max was livid about it, and they were like, this clip is Miami. This next clip is from the Netherlands. This clip is from Miami. This next one is from the Netherlands.
Netflix they do release like special clothing for each race, so maybe just pay a little bit more attention.
The podium hats literally have the flag of the race. So
anyways,
just a note about that, guys.
Yeah, I mean, keep up the good work. We're definitely laughing through the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's hysterical.
I'm really enjoying some of the commentary that some of the drivers are having.
There are certain things I didn't really need to see.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, I didn't need to see Carlos post-surgery, them putting bandages on him, didn't need to see George Russell having a panic attack. Some of it just felt a little like, we shouldn't be here for this.
Yeah. But
notes for next time, guys.
Yeah, for all the Netflix execs that are watching.
You never know. We also, yesterday, so Friday, we went to Costco, and completely different note, guys.
We had seen that through TikTok that there were F1 Legos at Costco, and
so the new collection of F1 Lego sets have come out, and it is the each team has an actual Lego car this year.
We're not talking about the two. Well, they are coming out with like a $200 one, and it's huge. I'm sure you guys have seen it.
But they do have smaller ones as well.
Like
I think they just have a range of like really large ones, which they typically do with most motorsport Lego sets. They usually have like the really large ones, and then they have smaller ones that just like range. So at Costco, if you're in the U.S., not really sure how Costco's work outside of the U.S. It looks like y'all outside of the U.S. get a lot more F1 gear than we do, but there were 4 Lego sets at American Costco's. So there was Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes, and then so we got all of them, and they were $21 or $22 at Costco. So they're actually cheaper than they are at a Lego store or elsewhere.
Because I think at Lego they're $27.
Yeah, and then we went to Barnes & Noble's yesterday, and I always forget that Barnes & Noble carry Lego sets, and we walk in, and the first thing on the table were the rest of the Lego sets. So we bought 6 more while we were there so we could have the entire grid.
Please note, we spent our own money.
Yeah, it really made me shed a tear a little bit, but it's okay. It's worth it. We're going to have the whole grid, and we're going to somehow display them for you all to see.
Emma's very into Legos right now, if you guys couldn't tell.
Well, I'd rather spend my money on this than... Well, I stopped... Well, okay, y'all don't care about this, but I did dry January, and then I just, like, stopped drinking, just, like, because why not? And because of that, I'm not going out and, like, doing stuff, and so I have money to spend, and so might as well buy Lego sets. And this is a fun, healthy, at-home activity I can do, and I really want to buy the Rivendell one, but not about to drop, like, $800 on a Lego.
Yeah, we've looked into the Rivendell one.
And we also have nowhere to display that one, but anyways, we're getting away from the point. get that if you're interested in it. That's where you can get all of those. Or you could also just go probably to the Lego store.
Yeah,
the ones at Barnes & Noble were $26 or $27. The ones at Costco were like $21 or $22, so they were a couple dollars cheaper, which was very nice. So,
yeah.
Okay, talking about the Australian Grand Prix, back to what the whole point of this episode. So, if you're in Central Time, I just want to go over the schedule really quickly for all of y'all. If you are in Central Time like we are in America, in the Midwest, our race schedule is...
Did you just call Nashville the Midwest? I think
like the middle of the Midwest of the country.
I think most people consider this the South.
We are the South, but like Kentucky, we're like that line. We're almost like Virginia. We're like that line of like, are we Midwest or are we South?
I think we're.
But
South.
Also, there's people in
Kentucky has more of that. But anyways.
I know people that say like Kansas is Midwest. I'm like, no, that's like the West. Or the central of the country. I don't know.
American public school education.
Anyways, the schedule for the race weekend. FP1 is on Thursday at 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. FP2 is Friday from midnight to 1 a.m. We will be watching that delayed and be posting the info delayed for that one because I need sleep. FP3 is Friday night from 8:30 to 9:30. And then quali is Saturday morning from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. Again, we'll be posting that late. And then the actual race is Saturday night at 11 p.m. We'll probably watch that live. I will probably go to, like we do typically when we have races on like in that area of the world, we will go to bed for a couple of hours and then
Emma will probably. I'll probably just stay awake.
Yeah, I go to bed at like 8:30, so I'll be going to bed at 8:30 and then waking back up. I'll take a quick little nap, wake back up for the race, and then go back to sleep afterwards because then it's St. Patrick's Day party for us a day early afterwards.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay, to actually get ready for the race, we're going to be doing our normal stuff. This feels nice to get back into it. Who are you talking about, MC?
So, I'm not throwing it too far back. They're probably the most contemporary driver I feel like I've ever researched. But we're going over Mark Webber. So okay. I feel like we've never really talked about him.
I mentioned him in mine.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to make sure which race you were doing. I mean, not that I really like give race details, but there is a few little tidbits that are just a little like, that's interesting. Like,
he said some spicy comments over the year.
Yeah. He also like is like constantly breaking bones. Like the guy likes to go on like mountain bikes and hiking. And,
I feel like that tracks for an F1 driver.
Like he had he just broke bones. Like he did certain races.
I feel like I've seen videos of him. He and Seb did not get along when Seb first joined Red Bull.
We'll get into it.
Okay.
There's reasonings.
Speaking of Seb, this weekend was the Race of Champions. Don't really know what that is. Gotta do some research on that. But him, Sebastian Vettel, and Mick Schumacher were Team Germany. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
nice
we don't
to
know
see
anything
Seb
about
come out of hiding.
But yeah, and I think, was it in Australia?
Yeah, I think it was in Melbourne.
Yeah, so curious to see if he'll be at the opener this coming weekend. Like,
I hope so.
There. But yeah. So what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the 2009 Australian Grand Prix. There's a TV show where they talk about it in the like Braun GP TV show that's on Disney or Hulu or whatever.
ABC.
All of the things that Disney owns.
The entire monopoly.
Yeah. Definitely a monopoly. And there's like an episode on it at one point. Watched it briefly like a year ago. Can't really remember much about that episode, but it's definitely an interesting one, and it's one that has a few records in it. So I feel like that's also one of the most recent races that I've spoken about. Usually we don't talk about stuff that's so modern.
Yeah.
But I figured to start things off, let's not go all the way back into history, because why not?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get into it.
It is funny the amount of like resources there are for like the older legacy drivers versus one that's like still alive and like healthy and relatively young. Um so Mark Webber was born on August 27th, 1976, and I believe I'm pronouncing this right. I did look it up. I apologize, Australia.
Oh,
Someone
Lord.
correct me. Queanbeyan, New South Wales, Australia. It's just, there's like a few extra letters that are freaking me out.
I saw a TikTok the other day of Australians making fun of the way that Americans say Australian city or town names. Um, it's because we're pronouncing them like most likely Americans are pronouncing them how they're spelt phonetically.
I mean, if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that my accents are the most American. I feel like a little bit of Valley Girl comes out. It's just terrible.
To be fair, a lot of Australian slang is just shortened words and said funny.
Or said with an Australian accent.
No, like you know what I'm talking about?
No. But anyways,
okay.
When he would drive while he would drive motorbikes around his grandparents' farm when he was young, he would finally enter the karting world when he was around 12 or 13, which I thought was kind of crazy because a lot of times you hear them getting into karting at like 7.
Yeah, it's pretty old.
So I think his dad owned like a petrol station and a motorbike like retailer. So he was like around this like wheels. He was very successful in the Australia karting world and would move on to racing on Australia's Formula Ford series when he was 18. While Mark was successful in Australia, he stated that he knew he would have to head over to like Europe to further his career in motorsports. And so he ended up moving to the UK in the mid 90s. Mark would start in British Formula Ford and would quickly climb up the ladder of British open wheel racing. He would join British Formula 3 in 1997, finishing 4th overall, and I think he was also made the Rookie of the Year. In 1998, Mark would join the Mercedes team for the FIA GT Championship, and his teammate Bernd Schneider and him would take second in this championship. Additionally, during this time, Mark would enter his first 24 hours of Le Mans. In 1998, him and his team had issues and were unable to finish the race. I think this does happen, like, pretty frequently, is, like, I mean, it's 24 hours, it's, like, you know, it's hard on these vehicles. In 1999, he would join Le Mans again, but unfortunately got into a crash during warm-ups and had to withdraw from that race. Mark would then move on to Formula 3000 and finally got a chance to enter the world of F1. Mark would start as a reserve driver for Benetton, Flavio Briatore's team, by the way.
The team that Michael Schumacher also I think that was the first team that he was on.
So he would start as a reserve driver for Benetton for the 2001 season. In 2002, Mark would finally have his chance to be in the car and began racing with Minardi. I think at first he was only guaranteed like 3 races, but then they were happy with his performance, so they continued the relationship.
Some context, Minardi turned into Toro Rosso, then turned into AlphaTauri, and now is V-Carb.
Mm-hmm. The season opener for the 2002 season was his home race, the Australian Grand Prix. Now, just for those that are new, the Australian Grand Prix was like the season opener for a while. So a lot of people are actually really excited that it's starting as the season opener.
We are too.
You know, I think the general energy, the fans, it's literally one of my favorites, that Suzuka Coda. So, he would qualify 18th, but a slew of retirements would see him finish 5th. Mark would finish this season in 16th, and his management team, who I think did consist of Flavio, by the way, began to look at other teams for him. Mark would move to Jaguar in November of 2002. Apparently, the car had some issues. I mean, what team doesn't? And his best result that season would be a few 6th place finishes. He would improve to 10th in the Drivers' Championship that year. And then Jaguar had, again, another unreliable car in 2004, seeming to cause issues for Webber. He scored 10 fewer points than the last season, and unironically, I believe 2004 was the last year for Jaguar, who then got sold to Red Bull. Racefans.net, which is one of the sources I use, actually stated that Webber went against the advice of his manager Flavio and ended up signing with Williams for the 2005 season, which, if anyone's been watching the current Drive to Survive season, Flavio, who is now a consultant for Kick Sauber, No, for Alpine.
Yes.
Alpine, thank you. Was trying to get Carlos on the team, but lost him to Williams.
Oh, I didn't even connect that.
So, little similar moment in history.
Not gonna lie, that man scares the living bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Unfortunately, Williams was not great. They had just lost their BMW engine supply, and 2006 was abysmal for Webber. He had to retire from his home race, and he would only score 7 points that season. Mark did not re-sign with Williams, and in August of 2006, his move from Williams to Red Bull was confirmed, and his teammate was David Coulthard. Apparently, people were kind of shocked that he got signed. One of the articles was stating that, like, Red Bull was known for, which I guess they're kind of still known for, but, like, kind of getting these really young drivers. And so, for someone who already had his years of experience, people were kind of shocked.
I mean, David Coulthard wasn't young either.
Yeah. I don't know.
Interesting.
I was doing the research on Mark Webber, not David Coulthard. Apparently, and Mark has a book, by the way. I don't know if I stated that already, and I think this is in his book. I have yet to read it, so I will confirm at a later point. But apparently, he had raised concerns over the treatment of younger drivers by Red Bull's advisor Helmut Marko, but was told by Christian Horner to obey Marko to avoid conflict. So again, I don't know. I need to confirm this, but there's that. Anyways, we're gonna just keep moving along.
Oscar will never go to Red Bull,
so we don't get sued. The earlier days of Adrian Newey and Red Bull didn't bring out these like crazy, unbeatable cars that new fans know when it comes to that relationship. The cars were pretty unreliable, and 2008 wasn't a knockout year for Webber either. 2009 saw Red Bull finally showing competitiveness, and Mark's new teammate Sebastian Vettel was also a helping hand in that competitiveness. At that year's race at the Nürburgring, Mark would finally achieve something that he had been waiting on for 130 races. He might have the record. I don't know if it's been broken, but he might have the record for like longest amount of races before his first win. And he finally won that freaking race. He did this after being handed a penalty as well after him and Rubens Barrichello made contact in the opening lap. So just like telling you like how impressive this winning feat was. He would also experience his second win that season at Interlagos. In 2010, Mark and Seb were in the lead for the championship, and as we've seen before, actually really recently, they did battle and unfortunately had a controversial incident during the Turkish Grand Prix. They collided and Seb DNF'd while Mark was able to finish first, and Mark would go on that season to win Barcelona, Monaco, Silverstone, and Hungary again. Or no, for the first time, sorry. Thought Nürburgring and Hungary and just hearing ring at the end. Unfortunately, the latter half of the season was not as successful, and Seb would clinch the title that year. And then 2011 was another struggle of a year for Mark. He would only see one race win this year at Brazil, and Seb just seemed to be able to outperform in the car at a quicker pace. Mark's final 2 seasons, while successful, appeared to have a lot of frustrations. In 2012, he would finish 6th overall, and the RB8 just was not as good as the last few Red Bulls had been. Additionally, apparently in 2013, there was a conversation between Ferrari and Weber for him to join the team. Fernando Alonso would have been his teammate, but he had supposedly promised Christian Horner and the owner of Red Bull, Dietrich, that he would remain loyal to them for the remainder of his F1 career. The final bit of frustration would happen at that year's Malaysian Grand Prix, and I think this hits home right now with his relationship with Oscar and the drive to survive energy, pumping the drama. Seb ignored team orders and did not finish behind Weber. This caused tension between the two, some even saying that respect was lost. I'm sure it's been years. Who knows what that relationship is, but team orders have been such a controversial issue in teams, and I just think it's interesting that what people feared was going to happen last season when Lando refused for, obvious reasons of protesting, you guys can't be doing this. I wonder how his conversation with Oscar was after it all.
I think I've seen clips of Seb and Mark Webber during their time as teammates, and there was a lot of not great energy, I think between them, because I think Mark was expecting to be the number one driver, and then Seb was the young hotshot.
Yeah.
And Seb was Red Bull, young Seb, from what people have said, because we weren't fans during that time period, but from what people have said, he was very, he was a playboy wanting to win.
He was how they all are when they're young, you know? It takes years to mature.
Yeah.
And especially when the world's at your fingertips. So, while Mark didn't finish first in any races that season, he would still come in third overall, and he would retire from F1 at the end of this season. Mark would go on to join Porsche's sports car team the following year, competing in the World Endurance Championship. And with this team, they were able to accomplish 14 podiums, 8 of which were wins, and a World Drivers' Championship for his team. It's a thing in other in other motorsport worlds.
Yes.
In this field, and this was the first Aussie to accomplish an FIA World Champion status since Alan Jones in 1980.
Oh, that's cool.
So I thought that was pretty cool. At the end of the 2016 season, Mark would finally retire from racing, and these days, I think he is just a manager. What I was trying to figure out was, if he, I don't know if he's the only manager of Oscar, or if
I think he is.
But
I don't know if he has any other athletes, to be honest.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's Mark Webber. He's alive, and I'm pretty sure he's in his 40s and just living life in Australia, I'm assuming.
I know he goes to some races. He attends a bunch because of Oscar, but you'll definitely see him, I'm assuming, at the Australian Grand Prix. Yeah.
He's another one that has, a very, distinct jaw, like David Coulthard.
I feel like there's a couple. I feel like there's a couple of F1 drivers from the time of
the 90s,
the early 2000s that are very well known. There's over time there's been several hundred F1 drivers since the beginning of F1, and each decade I feel like has probably 5 or 6 that everybody remembers 100%, and he's definitely one of them.
Well, and it was funny because I was looking up I think I was looking at one of the 2012 races, and he was racing against Checo.
Yeah.
It's so it's just so funny to see so much overlap, and yeah, but that's cool. Mark Webber.
All right. And I am going to talk about the 2009 Australian Grand Prix, which Mark Webber, in fact, raced in. We did not plan this whatsoever. We both did our notes separately without telling each other what was going on.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, the 2009 Australian Grand Prix was really famous because it was Braun GP's F1 debut after Ross Braun bought the team from Honda F1 Racing. Honda had the team for A little bit. I don't know if they ever actually raced as a team. I'm trying to remember. But they just basically like went under financially. Like they were not putting money into their team anymore and they could not afford it. At least that's what was in the Braun GP documentary. And so the entire team, there was a bunch of all of the workers that were on Honda and everyone else, they all were able to convince this guy Ross Braun to buy the team, and hence Braun GP's formation. They only existed for a year or two.
Short, yeah.
No, just this year, because 2009, because then in 2010 it turned into Mercedes.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of the people on Braun GP continued to work for Mercedes, and they were still the team at Mercedes for a long time. Some might still even work there. So the Braun cars were driven by Honda's former drivers, Rubens Barrichello and Jenson Button. Our beloved Jenson Button, who replaced Danica Patrick in Drive to Survive this season, which is a really great change. This was also the race that was the debut of, I'm going to try to say this the best that I can, Sebastian Buemi. He was driving for Toro Rosso. Buemi became the first Swiss driver in Formula One since, I'm going to get this one wrong, Jean-Denis Delatraz, I think that's correct, in 1995. Buemi replaced Sebastian Vettel. Oh my God, why did I say this so weird? I'm sorry. Sebastian Vettel. Seb, who had moved to Red Bull Racing, replacing David Coulthard, who had retired.
Sebastian.
I'm sorry.
You said it like the little crab from
The Little Mermaid. Anyways, prior to the opening race of the season, McLaren and Renault actually planned to boycott the season opener, so this race, due to money not being paid to the teams. Don't really know why. Didn't really explain. But they were going to boycott it, and they ended up not boycotting it in the end, because of course. So both teams showed up for the race. The teams protested to this. A lot of the teams actually did protest to the stewards about the legality of Braun, Toyota, and Williams's cars, because they claimed that the diffuser on the cars were illegal. This was a big part of the Braun GP documentary they talked about. The protest was actually thrown out by the stewards, but the teams did appeal against the decision with an FIA International Court of Appeal hearing set for after the Malaysian Grand Prix. At the hearing, the diffusers were deemed legal. It was a big scandal that year. So free practice 1, the Williams cars of Nico Rosberg and Kazuki Nakajima set the pace, and they ended up first and second with only 0.05 of a second, splitting the two. Would love to see the day of Williams coming 1-2 in anything.
With 0.05 of a second.
Even if it's just a practice session, that would be an amazing day. Kimi Räikkönen was on Ferrari at this time, and he was the closest to Nakajima within half a second. Rubens Barrichello was 4th, and Jenson Button was 6th. Heikki this is a hard one. Kovalainen, we're gonna say that's correct. I think it's a Nordic name. I think he's Finnish, maybe.
You're doing great,
Some of these names are really hard. Okay. It does not roll off the tongue for us. Was the faster of the two McLaren drivers in 5th, with his teammate at the time, reigning world champion Lewis Hamilton, came in 16th with 2.3 seconds off the pace of the Williams cars. So not a great practice session for him. Felipe Massa on Ferrari was 7th. Timo Glock on Toyota was 8th. Adrian Sutil on Force India was 9th, and then Fernando Alonso's Renault was 10th. So that's just FP1. Also, FP1 and FP2 at this time were an hour and a half long each, and FP3 was an hour. I don't know why.
They change up some random rules, I feel like, every few years.
But FP2. Rosberg came in first again. And his time was 0.6 of a second faster than what he had achieved during the first session. The This round, Barrichello was second in his Brawn with the Toyota of Jarno Trulli in third. This had marked the improvement for Trulli as he was 12th in the first session, so not great. The only Australian in the field, Mark Webber, ended up fourth for Red Bull. Racing, he was ahead of Jenson Button, Timo Glock, and what is Nakajima's first name? Kazuki Nakajima. I'm probably just going to go by last names at this point. Weber's teammate, Sebastian, was 8th after a morning session that was interrupted by a hydraulic failure, which led him to pull his car off the road between turns 6 and 7. And then Force India, Sutil, he was 9th, and then on Ferrari, Felipe Massa was 10th. FP3. Rosberg was on top again. Williams in first. All 3 practice sessions. Crazy times. Trulli in his Toyota was second with, oh my gosh, he was 0.003 of a second slower, and he was in second. Jenson Button was third, just under 0.2 of a second behind Rosberg. Massa improved again to end up fourth and be the only driver from McLaren or Ferrari to finish in the top 10.
Wow.
I know. Again, that's crazy.
Yeah.
No McLaren or Ferrari in the top 10 and a Williams in first.
Crazy.
Yeah. Nakajima again impressed in the Williams, finishing 5th in front of Barrichello, Webber, and Glock, who took the next 3 fastest times and were split by around 0.06 of a second. The 2 BMW Sauber drivers were 9th and 10th, respectively. That was Robert Kubica and then Nick Heidfeld. Okay, now we're into the good stuff, qualifying. So Rosberg struggled, even though he topped the practice charts, and he only got 5th. In the end. The Brawn cars of Button and Barrichello dominated qualifying, with the Brazilian Barrichello, in case you didn't know, finishing first in the first 2 parts of the session. In the third session, Button managed to beat Barrichello by 0.3 of a second and secured the 4th pole position of his career and his first pole since the 2006 Australian Grand Prix. That ended with Button's car blowing its engine on the final straight. So, probably wasn't his best race. Not great memories. Vettel's Red Bull was third, with teammate Webber in 10th at his home race, which would later become 8th after the disqualification of the Toyotas. I'll explain that in a second. Kubica improved even further to line up 4th, easily outpacing his teammate Heidfeld, who did not make the third session and was running the KERS system, which we've gone over before. It's KERS, all capitalized. And Kubica was not running that system, so that was the difference in their cars. After Glock was demoted, Massa was promoted to 6th. And he was then the best KERS runner, ahead of teammate Raikkonen, with Heidfeld and Alonso completing the top 10 after the Toyota's disqualification. After the session, Hamilton was demoted 5 places as his gearbox had to be changed. We've seen that plenty of times, which originally dropped him from 15th on the grid to 20th. Originally. A little while after that penalty came out, the Toyota cars had their times deleted as the rear wing on their cars were deemed to be illegal. So in Parc Fermé, their cars were investigated, as they always are, and their rear wings were deemed to be illegal. This pushed Hamilton up to 18th, with Glock in 19th, and now Trulli in 20th. Gotta suck. It happens, though. Okay, the race. This is I tried to make it as short as possible, but I have like a page and a half of notes for this. Okay, so Button led away and retained his retained his pole position lead into turn 1. He was closely followed by Vettel, Rosberg, Massa, Kubica, and Raikkonen. They were all able to avoid in my notes, I wrote literal shit show of turn 1. So Barrichello's car had stalled off the start, which is a disaster.
Oh, no.
So he dropped from 2nd to 9th and was battling Webber into turn 1. After being hit from behind, Barrichello's left front tire impacted with the right-hand side pod of Webber's car, which half spun the Australian into the BMW Sauber of Heidfeld. Once Barrichello had emerged relatively unscathed, Webber impacted on the front left of Kovalainen's McLaren, causing irreparable damage to the left front suspension of the Finn's car. He is Finnish! I was correct. Okay. I knew it. I knew that I read it somewhere. But yeah, so it's a shit show. At turn 3, Massa attempted a move down the inside of Rosberg, forcing the German off course, and as a result, falling behind the Brazilian. At the end of the lap, Webber, Sutil, and Heidfeld all pitted to repair damage caused in the first corner incident. It's your classic pileup of turn 1, but you don't typically see cars stall anymore. It happens maybe once in a while. It happens in lower formula.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I don't even know. I mean, I'm assuming they can stall, but it's so computerized now.
Yeah, I don't think
that they have so much, like,
I don't think it happens
tech
anymore.
And data.
Where was I? All of this is actually benefiting Lewis Hamilton, moving from 18th to 13th after the first lap. He passed Bourdais, that's Bourdais, I think it's Bourdais, for 12th on lap 2, Fisichella for 11th on lap 3, and broke into the top 10 after passing Buemi on lap 4. In first, Button had a massive gap lead of over 4 seconds. And this is lap 4 or 5 when he set this is lap 6 when he set the fastest lap on lap 6 with a lap of 128.787. The fastest lap ends up getting taken by somebody else at some point.
Is that still the record?
No, because I just said the fastest lap ends up getting taken by somebody else.
What I meant,
I don't think so. Okay. I don't know.
Because I'm like, one of them I feel like has like a 2009 record.
It could be.
Back.
I don't know.
Anyways.
Vettel was still in second, ahead of Massa, Kubica, Raikkonen, with Rosberg completing the top 6. And then Hamilton attempted to pass Nelson Piquet Jr. for 9th, doing so at turn 13. Lap 10, Rosberg passes Raikkonen at turn 1 and moves up into 5th place on track. Kimi was slowed down because of this, and Barrichello was able to catch up a bit on the straight into turn 3 using the slipstream. He was still several car lengths behind the Ferrari as they entered the braking zone for the corner. Barrichello's car snaked under the brakes and clipped the back of Raikkonen's car, causing more damage to his car. Raikkonen was forced wide by the hit, and Barrichello's momentum initiated a passing move into turn 4, succeeding and moving into 6th place. So accidentally hitting Raikkonen allowed him to actually pass him, which, knowing Kimi's cursing, I'm sure he was very vocal on the radio. Lap 15, Button is leading by 4.3 seconds to Vettel, Rosberg, Barrichello, and Nakajima at this point. Lap 16, Vettel and Rosberg both pit. Vettel emerges still in second, but Rosberg had a front left tire issue and emerges in 12th. I think the tire gun had gotten stuck, which still happens today.
Yeah.
Lap 18, Nakajima crashes into the wall between turns 4 and 5. His front wing ended up in the middle of the track, so a safety car was deployed. Button went in for new tires, and the safety car picked him up as he came out. So the safety car then went in at the end of lap 24. At the restart, Button held position out front ahead of Vettel, Massa, and Kubica, who is still weaving his car to get temperature into his tires after he crossed the start-finish line, and then Raikkonen was behind. In a battle for 6th, Piquet had lined up a move on 6th place Rosberg, causing the German to defend on the inside. However, Piquet lost control of his car under braking, they think likely due to the tires not being up to the required temperature. Woof. And he spun off into turn 1 gravel, and he was out of the race. That's why you'll see them weaving throughout the course, as there is a safety car to keep their tires up to temperature. Further down the field, Glock lost 2 places to Hamilton and Alonso as both drivers attacked hard on the restart. Lap 31, some went into the pit, so the order was switched up a bit. Massa was told to pick up his pace after he pitted, as Raikkonen and Kubica were threats because they had longer middle stints. typical strategy stuff that we always see. Button now had his lead over Vettel by over 5 seconds.
Jeez.
Lap 39, Kimi made his second pit stop and rejoined 9th. 2 laps later, Kimi made an error whilst exiting turn 13 and spun off, glancing the wall on the right-hand side. He eventually returned to the pits to make an unscheduled pit stop. Rosberg and Vettel pitted one after the other. They had limited time on their soft tires, so they both just needed to. I think they pitted very close to the end of the race, so that they didn't have to race on the soft tire for very long. Massa was slowly struggling with suspension damage, so his car was limping around the track before he was able to retire, just trying to get back to the pits.
We've seen it before.
Button pitted for the final time on lap 47 and suffered a very slow stop with a sticking left rear wheel change, with the pit stop lasting a painful 13.2 seconds.
Woof.
Lap 56, Vettel made a slight mistake in turn 1 and allowed Kubica to make a run down the outside towards turn 3. Vettel braked early and Kubica was ahead turning in. However, Seb turned in and his front wing locked onto the side pod of Kubica's BMW. Due to this collision, both cars lost their front wings, but they carried on towards turn 4 and 5. Kubica was ahead, but without downforce, he understeered off the circuit into the wall and out of the race. Meanwhile, Vettel also made an error on the way into the corner, sliding and hitting the wall, causing his left front tire to bend back on itself. He carried on as he was still in the points at this time. He could only continue on for just over a lap as he hit ground to a halt between turn 10 and 11. As the debris was not cleared up in time, this led to only the second safety car finish in Formula One at this point in time. That was the second time this was the second time it ever happened. The safety car pulled in and the drivers proceeded over the line without overtaking. Button secured a debut victory for Brawn after leading the race from start to finish. Button and Barrichello completed a Brawn 1-2 finish. Truly finished third, although, which is crazy because he started 20th. Truly finished third, although there were accusations that he passed Hamilton under the safety car. This would later turn out to be true, and he was penalized 25 seconds, pushing him down to 12th in the results, thus promoting Hamilton to third. This decision, though, was later reversed. Truly was eventually reinstated to his third finishing position, and Hamilton was disqualified for misleading stewards during their investigation, which is crazy.
I would love to read how that
I know.
all went down.
I know. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in that conversation. Glock finished fourth, having started from the pit lane, and was followed home by Alonso, Rosberg, Buemi, and Bourdais. Buemi's 2 points made him Switzerland's first point scorer since Marc Surer at the 1985 Italian Grand Prix. Brawn became the first driver-team combo since Juan Manuel Fangio and Mercedes at the 1954 French Grand Prix to win the team's debut race, having started from pole position. Barrichello picked up his first podium since the 2008 British Grand Prix and his highest finish since the now infamous 2005 United States Grand Prix, in which only the 6 Bridgestone-shod cars started due to safety concerns with Michelin tires, which I actually think that when we get to the U.S. Grand Prix, I'm going to be talking about that one because that is actually insane. That's the end of my notes. But yeah, it was a really big weekend for Brawn GP, their debut. They came in a 1-2 finish. Hamilton got disqualified for misleading the stewards in an investigation,
Lewis,
which is crazy.
Like, what did you say?
Well, he's the reigning world champion, and the first race of the season, he's disqualified.
Yeah.
Which is insane. So, this was a very hectic race. Finding out that Seb was trying to finish the race with no front wing sounds literally psychotic. Also, I think Red Bull ended up, because he was racing for Red Bull at the point, I think Red Bull ended up having to pay a massive fine because they allowed him to race with a severely damaged car. So it just was a big shit show of an opener, which is why we love openers. So That is the 2009 Australian Grand Prix. So now we're going to get into our final thoughts. Final thoughts, MC.
We're going to have 11 teams in 2026.
Oh, yeah, we totally forgot to mention that at the beginning. Yeah. Cadillac is officially going to be a team in 2026, which, great. We love more seats. It's a little frustrating for the actual visuals that we make, because now I have to find a way to fit 22 drivers on
just make
the visuals. I had to figure it out.
A fraction smaller.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure that one out. But really, that's not that big of an issue. But it's great to see that we're gonna have another team on the grid. I'm really interested to see how it goes, and I want to know who they end up choosing.
Yeah. So one thing I had seen, and it was funny because me and Emma were talking about this when it was first announced, was will they try to take from IndyCar? Because for those of you guys that listened to, I think it was last episode, we're really trying to follow the IndyCar season very closely. Like, we already have our favorites. And I saw Alex Palou and Colton Herta, their names thrown into, like, one of those, like,
I did see that too.
like just visuals. So yeah, I'm curious if they're going to either take from IndyCar or if they're going to prioritize. I mean, Alex Palou's Spanish. Colton is American, I believe. And so I don't know. I just think it's going to be interesting if they do try to prioritize American drivers, like some people are predicting. I mean, Sauber, which will be Audi next year, is one that that a lot of people believe that's the reason why Nico Hülkenberg is signed for that team. They wanted a German driver. They're a German company. And so, I don't know, I think it's going to be interesting. For those that are, we say this all the time, but for those that are new, this is not the first time that there have been 11 teams on the grid. There's been a handful more in the past.
I think at one point there was like 24 cars on the grid.
Yeah, something like that. Like, I don't think it's going to overcrowd the grid. Like, no. I don't think 2 more cars is going to do anything. 2 more cars
is not going to change anything.
But it's going to be interesting. The last new team to enter the grid, I feel like that, like, made a splash was, like, Haas. Yeah. You know, being an American team. So, I think it's just going to be interesting to see how they do. I mean, it's a massive company. They have money.
I think it would be
wonder who their sponsors are going to be. It's probably really American brands.
Oh yeah. I think it would be not smart for them to prioritize American drivers, because Pato O'Ward has said that there is a significant difference between IndyCar and F1 and how the cars feel and how they drive. And we've even seen it with people who were not that successful in F1. They go to IndyCar and they're a lot more successful. But then we've also seen, I couldn't think of anyone in particular, but I'm sure that we've probably seen F1 drivers drive an IndyCar and not do that well and then do great in F1. I mean, Fernando Alonso has raced in the Indy 500 and he wasn't that great.
Yeah, but
it doesn't translate exactly over to each other.
I don't know. I kind of disagree with that take.
I just don't think that they're exactly the same.
No, I know that they're not the same, but I really think that, like, American drivers have never been prioritized. Like,
I think I don't think necessarily go looking for drivers just because they're American.
Yeah, I mean, go for the best driver, the most qualified in a perfect world, of course. Yeah, like, that's what everyone wants. But, like, I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I think if you can get an American driver, that would be great. If they happen to be the best one for right now, it would be interesting to see if they start being really successful and then they start a junior team, or like they have like a driver academy like a lot of the other F1 teams do, and then they support American drivers through the lower formula.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that Andretti Sr. is an advisor. You know, he's been in both worlds. There's a lot of
Andretti Cadillac.
there's lots of people who have been in both worlds and have been successful in both.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's anyone's game. Would love to see a woman, but you know.
Don't think that's happening just yet, unfortunately.
Yeah. Especially with it. Never mind. I'm not gonna go down that road.
Anyways.
But yeah, so I'm sure they'll talk about that a bunch in the opener because it's been the biggest news.
Yeah. It'll be really weird having an F1 season without Will Buxton, to be honest.
Yeah, he joined the IndyCar team on Fox.
Yeah.
I think the weirdest thing for me is all the rookies. It's gonna be interesting to see how everyone
I keep
does.
forgetting that there's so many changes to the grid. Like I said yesterday that I keep forgetting that Haas is Esteban and Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just in my mind nothing has changed, even though so much has changed.
No, I feel like because we didn't have a single change from the end of 2003 into the beginning of 2004.
2023 to 2024?
Yeah, you know what I mean. We've been talking for an hour. But yeah, it's going to be I'm excited. Like I think it's going to be
a lot of people are giving their
fun.
rankings already on where they think that drivers are going to fall. I don't think I can do that until after the first race weekend.
I feel like we said this last year too. Like I can't predict anything. Testing was
testing is testing.
Testing
literally tells you nothing because you don't know
what they're testing.
If people are literally sandbagging.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that's a term in this sport, but it's a term in rowing.
I don't know if it's used, but I remember them talking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But basically, I think if people really want us to give who we think is going to, how we think people are going to do, how we think that rankings
I need to see a race.
I need to see one race weekend before I can do anything because I need to see how the cars are because some teams, like, I hate to say it, but Williams in 2023 had a pretty decent car and they were doing pretty well at a bunch of races. And then last year, they could not get it right. So, like, it going from 2023 to 2024, I was like, Williams is going to come fifth. Like, Williams is going to do so well. And then the 2024 season, they struggled.
Well, the other interesting thing is that this is the last season with these regulations. So
yeah, we're not going to be able to do it the next year because we have no idea who's going to get it right.
The other thing is, too, while they are focusing on the season, they have teams that are already working on 2026.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they're not prioritizing 2025, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like an anyone's game type situation. Yeah. Because they're working on so much other development for a completely new,
I agree.
Regulations.
So we are very excited. It's going to be a really fun weekend and a fun season, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
I think it's going to be a good one. It was funny watching Drive to Survive and just kind of realizing how special 2024 was.
Yeah, it was a really good season.
And just how many momentous, occasions happened throughout the whole season. It's going to be a hard one to top.
Yeah, I agree. If that was your first season ever watching last year,
I don't
know how you're going to handle a very dominant season of a team. So, all right. I think that's everything.
Yeah.
All right. Make sure to follow us on all of the places. Make sure to subscribe, comment, like, do all the things. And we'll talk to y'all after the race.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.